Hi, and welcome to another episode of Ask on CYC. So tonight we're here to talk about the oldest church in Australia. We're here to talk about the first church our parents prayed at. We're here to talk about a church where one of our first candlelit happened, where our first baptism happened, or a baptism of a sibling happened. But right now, the council wants to demolish this church. And we're here to talk about how and what we can do about it as a congregation and as a youth of Australia. So I want to give you the phone number so you can send in your texts, and if you're courageous enough, give us a call so you can speak to our guest, because this is a very serious matter and needs to be addressed. And the phone number is 0416 551 292. So please send us your text, ask questions, or give us a call and speak to our guest. I'd like to introduce you to our guest we have with us today. Hanan Ghabour. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Mina.
So please give the audience a brief history about the organisation that you're here representing.
Our organisation is the Australian Coptic Heritage and Community Services. The organisation has been set up specifically to look at the heritage of Copts in Australia and also to provide community services. Our first goal for our organisation at the moment is to stop the demolition of the church by Marrickville Council at Sydenham. That's 24A Railway Road, Sydenham, the old St Mary and St Mina's Church. So that has been what's kept us busy so far. But without the community support, all our hard work will have little effect.
Okay, so give us a brief history about St Mary's Church in Sydenham, how it came to be our church.
Okay. St Mary's Church was built in 1880 by the Methodist Church, and we acquired it in, I believe, 1968. But we did not pray in it until 1970, 71. And when Copts first came to Sydney, we actually prayed in a Salvation Army hall in Redfern. And then we started and moved to St Mary's Church at Sydenham. In the 50s, 60s and 70s, many Copts left Egypt and went to various migrant countries, but the majority of them actually came to Australia and Sydney.
Yeah.
So that's just a brief history on when and where and how we acquired it. It was acquired with the donations of the new Coptic migrants that came to Australia at that time. So there was no government funding. It was all from the few pennies and dollars of those new migrants.
Okay, and in regards to outside of Egypt-wise, where does this church sit?
Okay, when immigration started from Egypt, that people started going to the United States and then Canada and then Australia. But Sydney was the first place in which the Coptic seed was planted, and it was at St Mary's Church at Sydenham. So St Mary's Church at Sydenham was the first Coptic Orthodox church to be purchased outside of Egypt. So it is not only relevant to Sydney, but the whole of Australia and Copts all over the world, because it is part of the church's history.
Sure. Okay, so this is not just an ordinary church.
No.
This is the first church to be purchased outside of Egypt.
That's correct.
Wow.
I don't think many people really knew that.
I prayed at that church and I never knew that. Yeah. Wow, okay. All right, so why did we move out of this church, and when did this happen?
The St Mary's congregation moved out of the Sydenham site in 2001, and they moved out of the Sydenham location because of the flight zone. So the airplanes were going very low over the church in that particular area, and as a result, the Commonwealth Government compensated the Coptic Church by giving them the site at Bexley, and there were many negotiations. Part of those negotiations were that the Commonwealth then acquired the building and then gave it to Marrickville Council for $1, on the understanding that Marrickville Council would look after the building, and it was heritage listed on a local level. Heritage listing is two levels, state and local, and This particular church was listed or is still listed on a local level. So it's in regards to the Marrickville locality.
Okay, so after we moved out of this church, what was the plan, the initial plan for this church being a heritage listed
The initial
church?
plan was that it is a heritage building which had to be kept and renovated and maintained and had to be put into use for the community, the Marrickville community in general.
Sure, so this was supposed to be maintained by Marrickville
That's
Council.
correct, yes.
And they did not do so.
Well, if anyone's driven past recently, it's in no condition. Nothing's ever been done to it. The roof's fallen in. There is, I believe, a lot of termite damage to the internal building, but the outside of the building is double brick and very sound.
Sure. So you talked about construction of the building, it's still sound, but we've been hearing a lot of number crunching and stats about the costs it will take to refurbish this building, but this is just numbers that we've been hearing around that we don't actually know what the real numbers are. What are the real numbers?
There are no real numbers. The only real numbers is it's going to cost Marrickville Council $300,000 to demolish it and turn it into a dog park. The $800,000 to $5 million rumours, there is no substantiated report to show that this is what it will actually cost. If it were to cost anything, it wouldn't be anywhere in that vicinity. There is some talk by particular engineers that has been put together, which says maybe 1.8 million, and that's if the whole building was actually renovated completely and soundproofed. Again, we haven't, as an organisation, seen any document which says a particular amount. They are numbers that are just pulled out of the air. We, in fact, have a meeting with Marrickville Council on Monday the 7th, the day after the vigil, the prayer vigil, and I think they're waiting to see the turnout as to whether and how much impact we have, and they're not very supportive of us doing this vigil at all at this stage. They're worried.
Yeah. Sorry. I want to ask, so it's been 14 years, so why has the council decided to demolish it now?
The council is demolishing it now because there is something called demolition by neglect. So you leave a building until it falls apart, then you declare it unsafe, then you get a DA and you demolish it. Simple as that. Even though it's heritage listed. It's heritage listing. If it becomes unsafe, they can apply for it not to be heritage listed anymore.
Have they done that?
As far as we know, it is still listed on the heritage list for the local area.
Sure.
But they have applied for a DA for its demolition and it has been approved, and they have passed it through council, and this is really the last call because at the end of January the demolition company is supposed to go in and demolish the building.
Oh, wow.
So there's no more time to play around with information or just give it a chance to see what they're going to do. This is really going to happen if we just stand and watch.
Okay, I want to ask, why are we doing something now that the proposal of the demolition has come forward? What I'm trying to ask is why we being reactive and not given the opportunity to be proactive about it and do something about it within the last 14 years?
Okay. The church was going to be demolished several times over the last 14 years, and every time it stopped, whether it be by intervention by the Premier of New South Wales in the past, or by others, or by proposals, or by negotiations. The negotiations that took place were many, but the council's demands and conditions increased, and the figures increased, so it made it impossible for the community to pay what is being asked of them. So when we first approached council as an organisation, we were told, show us the green. And our reaction to that was, well, you show us the statements that say how much exactly. We aren't going to show you any money until you show us the statements, until we have the opportunity to do our own assessment by professional engineers and architects, and then have a work plan as to what is really required and in stages. We're not going to give you money just like that. So for Marrickville Council, it would be easier if we took it. They'd get $5 million or $2 million or whatever amount for 25 years and then take it back. So they've won either way. To demolish it, they've won, because to demolish it means they're making way for themselves. So after the year 2026, the 25 years of community land is up and they can actually sell it. So now they're getting more serious about it. But there has been a number of stages where there could have been more intervention. Unfortunately, whatever intervention occurred in the past was local, between the church and the council. We have taken it a lot further than that. We're making it a federal issue and a state issue. We're bringing local, federal and state governments on board, because it's not just a local issue anymore. And it's not about the Sydney area anymore. It is about, it is a national issue, and it's an international issue. So this is the difference between what was and what is. Our organisation is completely independent of the church or any other organisation. So what we're doing is independent of whatever has been done in the past, as a Coptic community, not necessarily as the Coptic Orthodox Church.
Okay. Just a reminder to our viewers, please send in your questions to 0416 551 292. Please send your questions and we'll answer it for you live on the show here tonight. Or if you're courageous enough, give us a call and ask a question about the demolition of the St. Mary's Church in Sydney. So, moving back to the topic, I wanted to ask, what is the goal now? Are we trying to take it back, lease it back, own it again, or what's the primary goal we're trying to achieve right now?
Okay. The primary goal right now is to stop the demolition.
Sure.
When we stop the demolition, we have time to talk and negotiate. While we're attempting to stop the demolition, we need people to come along and support. We need numbers. Numbers talk. We are Australian Copts, and as Australian Copts, we've paid lots of taxes, and we have a right to have our heritage preserved. We have a right to have our history preserved. And that's not going to happen by us sitting at home and waiting for it to fall together. It's not going to happen. We need to get up and actively do something about it. And all we need from people right now to stop that demolition is to have numbers. The council cannot ignore numbers. There is a federal election coming, there's a state election coming, councils are being amalgamated, and this is our opportunity to raise our issues and our concerns and to stop the demolition. Then we can negotiate what happens next. There's nothing to negotiate if the church is demolished in January.
Sure. But can I ask you something? If we do take it back and we do all these refurbishments to it, what guarantee that the youth today will use its resources or come back to it? The reason why I ask this is because there's been a turnover of youth, and the youth who once served in that church are not youth anymore and have their churches to pray at. And the ones that the youth today don't hold any sentimental value for St. Mary's in Sydenham. So what guarantee, after all this money has been spent and all the time we put into getting the church back, that we will get the numbers and the youth to come back and use its resources?
There's two things that are intended that this building be used for when it's acquired. The first thing is, as a Coptic museum, it's not going to be used as a church. There is problems with parking. But the bottom of the building is going to be used as a community centre. Now that will include youth services, and it'll include other services, such as a soup kitchen for the homeless and needy, such as welfare services, counselling services, services for families, children. Our Coptic community has no services, no welfare type services for the whole community. We have not had any funding. We lose about $30 million of funding every year. So acquiring the building and preparing it appropriately for services, a lot of things will bring the youth there. whether it be youth workers, whether it be activities, whether it be functions, whether it be getting assistance, whether it be serving in the museum itself. That's one thing. But also it'll be useful for the community at large in that it will become part of the education system and schools can have it in their curriculum. They teach multicultural studies and they teach about Australian history. Well, this is part of Australian history. This is where a particular community, the Coptic community, came into Australia. So it will become a tourist site, it will become an educational site, it will become a community service site. So I think those things will bring the youth into that site and that location. Plus, it's very close to public transport.
Okay. Yeah. We've got a couple of questions that came in from an audience member, so I'll just ask them. The first question that came in is, you mentioned that it was the first church purchased. What about America?
America purchased after us. America started praying before us, then Canada, then Australia. But we bought before they bought.
So they were renting?
They were renting.
Okay. But they prayed first?
We all prayed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. They started first, US, Canada, Australia. But Australia was the first to purchase.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay. Next question that came in. Can we really call it Egypt when the altar was consecrated?
Is the church just by consecration? And if we're going to talk about consecration, consecration takes a couple of hours. We prayed in that location, in that building, in that church for 30 years. So 30 years worth of Passion Weeks and Kiak prayers and masses and weddings and baptisms. Surely 30 years of prayers has consecrated it enough. And also the first Pope to visit Australia came and prayed in it. And the altar itself wasn't consecrated, but why did they take it and move it to St. Mary's new location if it was of no value because it wasn't consecrated? What was it consecrated by all the prayers, yet the rest of the building was not? It doesn't make sense. So what do people define as consecration? Is it purely just the holy oil or the particular prayers? Or is it more than that? And are all the monasteries consecrated from top to bottom in all their locations or just the altars? I believe that consecration is a lot more than just a specific prayer, but this place has been consecrated by the prayers of those new migrants and people who had nobody and nothing. And it founded and developed and nurtured all of those young families that came to Australia. And each of us whose families came at that time, we are who we are today because of Sunday school, because of youth's meetings, because of the principles and values that we were taught in that place. I mean, one of the things that I was taught at St. Mary's Church in Servants Prep a very long time ago was we're not even worthy to sweep the dirt off the ground of the floor of the church, off the ground of the church building. So those very important values mean more than just whether or not there were absolutely 5 hours of consecration prayers.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I believe, my belief, and a lot of people believe that prayers are a lot stronger than a lot of other things. I respect the church's culture and tradition, but nobody could say that 30 years of prayers have not consecrated that church.
A very beautiful way to look at it.
Thank you.
We're going to go for a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue. So please, I encourage the audience members to ask questions, and the phone number is 0416 551 292. Should we knock down the St. Mary's Church in Sydenham? Please send us your questions, send us your opinions, or give us a call, and your questions will be answered live on the show here tonight. Thank you.
CYC, Christian Youth Channel.
So welcome back to Ask. On the episode on St. Mary's Church in Sydenham, should we leave it to get knocked down. So please send us your questions or give us your opinions on this matter to 0416 551 292. So we're going to continue our discussion with Hanan. So Hanan, I want to ask you, how much sentimental value does St. Mary's Church in Sydenham have with you?
Well, it's the only place that I grew up in. My sister was baptised there. When we came there, this is where I started Sunday school. And this is where I went to servants prep. This is where I learnt to serve. This is where I watched the elderly women, the widows that used to serve in the kitchen and look at their life of giving and sharing and our practical Christian generosity towards newcomers, making people feel at home. Church was home. We all came here, maybe we didn't have uncles or aunts or other relatives, but people that we saw at the church were our aunts and uncles and relatives. And almost everybody was in the same boat. We were all nuclear families coming, and this was home. This is where we got to feel like we weren't strangers as we did in the school system or we did in jobs, or, you know, this was where people spoke Arabic, and this is where people nurtured their children, and where our parents found refuge in a new country where, you know, it was scary, it was new, it was different, it didn't have their food, it didn't have anything. So the church provided everything through that location, whether it be learning hymns, whether it be social work services. I mean, social work services started from that time where we had a few people working in immigration, and they would come to the church and help people fill out forms and find housing and a whole range of things. So that location wasn't just a church, it was a community. It was the foundation where we learnt palm making, where we did our first vacation care centre, where we learnt arts and crafts of the church, where we did plays, where we did... it was everything. I mean, going to school or work and then church, that was it. So it has a lot of sentimental value. As I said, my sister got baptised there.
So did my brother.
Yeah. So it would be very sad to say, oh, well, once upon a time my sister was baptised in this dog park, in a building that was in place of this dog park. So it's very close to my heart. And although I moved on from St. Mary's Church and I went to another church in my youth, I will never forget what I was taught there. And I value it greatly. And it was the link to Egypt. That church was the link to Egypt for many, many, many people. And it is the link to how we came to this country and how we established ourselves in this country. So it is very sentimental and it is very important. And if I can do anything about it, it's not going down.
Sure. Okay. So people have been saying on this matter that the church is the congregation and not the structure that houses the congregation.
Yes.
What is your opinion on that statement?
It's true, but you're not going to meet in the street. You have to have somewhere to go. And everybody looks for a safe haven. And that church was a refuge and a safe haven for many, as all of our churches are. So today we're going to agree that St. Mary's be demolished. So we're setting a precedent. So who's going to say St. Mark's won't be later on in many years' time, when people have outgrown it and gone elsewhere, or there's been other buildings or churches or whatever? Does that mean when the congregation gets old and moves on, that then we can demolish any other church? Does that mean you demolish St. Mary's Cathedral in the city because it's gotten too old and people maybe are going to more local churches? Does that mean Ayers Rock should be bombed? Does that mean the pyramids in Egypt should be also moved? Does that mean all the monasteries don't matter, and when they're flooded or when they're burnt down or when they're demolished by any means, that they should never be rebuilt or never be preserved? If that was the case, then all those churches that they find underground in Egypt, those archaeological sites, would be of no value. Yet they are. And lots of money is poured into preserving them. This building is no different. This building is a heritage to us. It is where our community began in this country. And as Australians, we have a right and a responsibility to ensure that that's preserved by government, local, state, federal, but also by us standing up for our rights as Australians.
I hear when Pope Shenouda was here to anoint the new church of St. Mary's in Bexley, he also said, look after
Your heritage.
the old
and
St. Mary's Church,
yes.
so you have two buildings.
Yes. He said, God, St. Mary's given you a new blessed place, but do not forget the original place. And he also used to always say, the Coptic Church never sells and never demolishes their churches. And in this case, we're doing both, selling and demolishing. And while we're not doing it directly by being silent and complacent and staying in our seats and observing only, we are saying yes to demolition. By standing up, by coming along, by voicing our views, by sticking together as a united community, we are saying demolition by neglect is not on for the Coptic community.
Look, I believe I can speak for a lot of people. A lot of people weren't aware of what's going on. Now that you have the attention of the youth of Australia and Sydney, and you have the attention of the congregation of Australia and Sydney, what do you have to say to them?
Stand up for your church. Stand up for your heritage. Stand up as real Christians. In Australia, we have freedom to do so. In Egypt and other countries where it's more difficult, they stand up all together and protect any church. I often hear that when they hear a church is going to be demolished in Egypt, people come from all over the country to stand in the way of its demolition by anybody. And yet here, we don't. But now it's time to act and come along and be united. This is something that should unite us, not only in Sydney, but around Australia and around the world. People should be participating in any way they can. It's yours. You either take it or you leave it. And if you leave it, it's going to be a dog park. And in the future, it will be something else, because right across the road from that building, our church, is a brand new $2 million SES building that's been built there. So it's not correct that that site will stay as it is. The Commonwealth's agreement with the council ends in 2026. There will be other buildings going up. It could be a mosque, and I'm not scaring anybody by saying that. We are hearing rumours of that. I don't like to speculate, but there will be other buildings going up. So how are we going to feel when we see either just green grass and dogs playing around in place of the church, or how are we going to feel in a period of time where we see something else come up? Because that is what will happen.
Okay. So our first step now is to stop the demolition. What can we do about it?
Come to the prayer vigil on the 6th of December. Come, we need numbers. Numbers speak louder than anything else. We need to take action. We need to let people know. We need to spread the word, and we need to come together and stop the demolition.
So can you please give us more details about this vigil? What time is it? Where is it?
Yes, it's on Sunday the 6th of December from 4 o'clock in the afternoon on the grass area just outside the church at Sydenham, 24 Railway Road, Sydenham. We will be there from 4 till 7:30. There will be members of Parliament, federal and state and local coming. And hopefully we will have our 3 bishops. We've invited them to come along because it's a national issue. It's not just a local issue. And as a united community, we have power to stop the demolition and to reacquire the church.
So in front of the government and the council, it's a numbers game. They want to
It
see
is a numbers game.
So it's about all of us.
It is about all of us.
And going to this event.
Yes. Stand up and be counted, because this is what it's about now. The time has come to an end. This is the last call. If we don't do it now, it's done and dusted. And the council is very upset that we are actually doing this particular vigil because they thought it was all done and dusted. They've agreed that it's going to be demolished. No one wants it. 5 million's too much, etc., etc., etc. There's no amount, and it doesn't have to have conditions, and it's nowhere near 5 million. And even if it is, the council needs to put in the majority of that for their neglect of the building, and the Commonwealth and the state government need to come in and support us and assist with its reconstruction and refurbishment and assist us with what needs to happen to it to preserve it as part of Australian history.
If people want to contact your organisation to help out or to get involved or to know more, how can they contact you guys?
They can contact by email. Our email address, I believe, will come up on the screen at some point. They can contact us through our website. There is also a contact mobile number that they can ring, and we're happy to take their questions or their inquiries.
Sure, what's the phone number?
I don't know it off by heart, but I gave it to you guys before I started.
Sure, I'll get the guys to put up on the screen.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, for
My
the viewers
memory's
to
not
see.
that good.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be up in the description on the YouTube channel.
Okay.
Okay, so if the viewers
So,
want to access
yeah.
it, they'll access it through there.
So there's Facebook, there's email, there's website, there's phone. So there's no excuses for anybody who wants to know anything. We're happy to answer any questions, and we certainly need a lot of hands of help. So if people want to help, set up for the day or help in any other way in the future, they can do so by contacting us by any of those 4 means. That's as far as...
Sure. Okay. Well, that's all we have for time for tonight's show, and I'd like to thank you very much for your insight on this topic, because a lot of us out there are very unaware of these of what's going on with the St. Mary's Church of Sydenham. And I'd like to thank you for coming on the show and giving the people the opportunity to find out what's happening behind the scenes and giving them voice and helping out with the St. Mary's Church in Sydenham. So after the show, we have a few photos that's going to be shown to the viewers about showing them the church and what's happening with it at the moment.
Excellent.
And hopefully, through the grace of God, we'll all stand united.
Yes.
And show our support to our home and our mother, St. Mary's Church in Sydenham. Thank you, Hanan, for coming on the show.
Thank you very much, Mina. Thank you.
And thank you to our viewers for tuning in to today's show. So this is your opportunity to do something back to your community and do something back to your church that held your parents and baptized your brothers and sisters. So please, ladies and gentlemen, the power's in your hands now. Thank you for tuning into tonight's show. I am your host, Mina Ibrahim, from your CYC studios in Sydney. Good night and God bless.